Okay, hi everyone. I think we'll make a start. Yes, hello everyone and welcome again to the third, I think it's the third now, third Sova Middle East event. Thank you for coming. I think we're really seeing familiar faces, people are coming back, are listening to our workshops. So thank you very much for that. So my name is Becky. It does say Claire Ramantala for both John and I. We've logged in through the marketing account, but I'm Becky, a chartered occupational psychologist. I've been working in this area for the last 15 or so years and in this region for the last 6 years. So I do everything from supporting clients with their assessment and selection processes to leadership development, coaching, and just general occupational consultancy. So I'm hosting, facilitating today and also presenting some content. I'm also joined by John. So John, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Jonathan, Managing Director at Sova Middle East. Background in consulting and psychology, previously in the UK. I've been in the Gulf region for coming up to 5 years now. I'm running Sova Middle East into our third year now. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining today.
Okay, thank you. And then we've got our special guest, our industry expert today. So Ala'a, do you want to say a quick hello?
Sure. Thanks, Becky. Thanks, John. Hello, everyone. My name is Ala'a Dwaikat. I'm a director in PwC Middle East in the People and Organization practice. Have been with PwC for more than 5 years now, and in consulting overall 14 years. I focus on people and organization in general, but also I focus on talent and competency assessment in my service offerings. Glad to be here. Thanks everyone for joining. Looking forward to this.
Thank you very much. So yes, as most of you know, we like to showcase a different topic each month and then have our expert to answer some questions. So today we're talking about how to design an engaging assessment process. So obviously there's a lot to it. We're going to try and condense this into the session. So we'll have a few overview slides to start with, and then part two we'll do an interview with Ala'a and Jonathan and any questions from you. So please do think about as we go along if you have any questions or anything you want to ask our expert panel today. Please do put your questions in the notes box and we can come back to them. Or if you'd rather speak afterwards, that's absolutely fine as well. So I'm just going to hand over to John to do a quick introduction to Sova for those who are completely new, who we've never met before.
Thanks, Becky. Yeah, so just as a quick introduction to Sova, we're founded back in 2015 by Dr. Alan Bourne, and really our goal from an assessment perspective is to combine the best of science and technology. So from a science perspective, it's about using the solid scientific basis of psychometric assessment and other types of assessment we might have on the platform, but to ensure that we're predicting something useful and to make sure that when we're assessing people for jobs that we can pass our clients useful information about how they're likely to perform. From a technology perspective, we're now fully virtual. We've been digital for 2 or 3 years now, but we're now fully virtual in terms of some of the upgrades we've made to the platform. So all of our assessments are virtual. And wrapped around this, we very much focus on the engaging and immersive user experience. And that's something we'll be talking a bit more about today in terms of how we're making this more engaging and more immersive for candidates or employees themselves. And at the same time, the technology is very flexible, so it's highly configurable in terms of what we can put on the platform. And we're also doing some work in terms of AI and machine learning algorithms as well, to automate things like scoring, but also to help us with analyzing things like video interview as well. Just in terms of our global presence, as I mentioned, we're headquartered in the UK, in London, but we also have offices in Ireland, Australia, Melbourne, and also here in Dubai. We operate globally, and we also very much partner with organizations to help us create some reach into the market. We have around 400,000 candidates on our platform. That's the latest version of our platform at the moment. And we have some 1,500 projects live at the moment. Just in terms of the end-to-end offering from a Sova perspective, we started with some proprietary tools, so things like personality and cognitive, and then we've added to those over the years. But originally, we were starting with the idea of blended assessment, where we can provide whole person assessment. And then as we've upgraded the platform, we now have a fully unified candidate experience, and also from an assessor perspective as well. So everything that we put in the platform can be viewed and assessed from one single interface, rather than having lots of different links and interfaces for candidates and users. So we also have things like video interview, our virtual assessment center, and we have other tools like 360 feedback. And as I mentioned, we are doing a lot of work in predictive analytics, and also trying to ethically embed things like machine learning across the platform. Just in terms of some of the trends influencing talent strategy, we thought it was useful to signpost these. We've been talking about them on lots of our webinars, and the landscape is changing quite quickly. But just to sort of put a nod to these in terms of talent, organizational change, which is obviously a constant in organizations, but particularly now, as it would relate to things like the future skills which are going to be needed for employees as we go through the fourth industrial revolution and the huge changes that we've seen come into organizations. So there is a new skill set that we need to assess for as part of this organizational change. And the second one, which is the digital technological transformation, this has been enforced for some time now. But recently, The Economist actually dubbed this a tech acceleration, in the sense that the acceleration as part of the pandemic that we saw last year has accelerated the pace of change. And really, that digital technological transformation that was already in place in things like retail, e-commerce, online learning, finance, and banking, that has really accelerated over the last year. And that also means that we need to think about the types of skills that are going to be needed in these organizations which are digitally and technologically transformed. The changing demographics, there's quite a lot in there, but I mean, from a golf perspective, we've obviously seen a huge amount of job losses, unfortunately, due to the pandemic. So there are some changing demographics in terms of the wider talent pool. And therefore, how do we begin to sift through that and understand where the right talent is for the new organizational structures that are now in place, and how can we really assess for those different skills? From an employment relationships perspective, again, the main thing to highlight here is around virtual working and the expectations of a new psychological contract, I think, which we're beginning to see come into force in terms of the type of employee relations. There's lots of gig workers in the gig economy, contract workers, and very much people moving around quite quickly. So this has created a need for a slightly different assessment approach. And just lastly, on number 5, the purpose of the business and responsible business and ethics is also a strong theme that continues to come through, into 2021, as organizations continue to think about how they are being ethical. It requires a new assessment approach as well, particularly for senior leadership positions, where we might want to assess for the types of traits which are aligned to ethical business practice. So I think I'll hand back to Becky at this point. Thanks, Becky.
Okay, thank you very much. So with all of that in mind, how do we make things engaging for candidates? How do we make sure that we're ethical but engaging? It's something new. How do our assessments, appeal to leaders, to apprentices, to everybody? It's a complete minefield. There's lots and lots of technology around, lots of information, lots of different processes, but it's hard to put them all together and to make this engaging. So we'll just have a look at a few slides around this area. Yeah, so what we found from our own learning and understanding about the candidate journey is actually, obviously candidates go through both a positive experience and a negative experience, but where they're really seeing a positive experience is around the attraction employer branding piece, and the realistic job previews. And this is perhaps because, well, it's relevant, it's engaging, it's something of interest. You know, the candidate wants to know more about the company, they look at the branding, they are involved, they feel they have a chance to get the job. So perhaps that's another reason, but these two areas are showing to be very positive for candidates. Then still positive, but a bit less so the face-to-face assessments. And again, this is because the person perhaps feels important, they're there, they're in front of the employer, you know, again, they've got a chance. It could be the other way around, they could be being very socially desirable and getting positive feedback from the employer in that regards. But these areas are shown to be very positive. And then again, just dipping down slightly, the hiring process of the onboarding piece here. So still some engagement, but not as much as these upfront realistic job previews, face-to-face assessments and attraction pieces. So this is good news for assessments, assessment processes, but where we're seeing negative experiences is around the application. So this is obviously the application to the role, the online assessments, and communication and feedback. So perhaps candidates are feeling, you know, excited about a role, but then they apply, their engagement goes down, then they have to complete online assessments, then they're not communicated to, then they might not have feedback. So it's, I suppose, really about thinking how we can combat these negative aspects that they're experiencing and build them into a positive assessment process. So some of the challenges of traditional assessments, I'm sure you're all very familiar, you know, it's a bit like a fragmented view. We see the candidate in one context, somebody else might see them in another context. You might have a telephone interview going on, then an assessment center, then you might outsource the assessments to someone else completely. So you might actually have 3 or 4 parties looking at a candidate and then putting this information together manually to make an informed decision. So this can obviously be time consuming, not very engaging, you know, disjointed assessments. It's not good for the candidates. It's not good for continuity of brand as well. Traditionally, there's a lack of feedback. You know, when I worked in the UK, we were, you know, previously advising clients, you know, offer feedback. You don't have to, you know, it's best practice to give it, but most candidates won't ask for it, but offer it. But now we're really seeing a trend towards, you know, offer it and give it to them, whether the candidate has asked for it or not. So having this available can really help that cycle and keep the candidate engaged for more. So they might not be suitable for the role that they're applying for, but there might be other roles that are suited. So if we can create a candidate pool, talent pool that you can use, then this is obviously going to save your business money and keep candidates engaged. Traditionally as well, assessments very labor intensive, clunky, you know, not very friendly to do, not very easy. I remember my first assessment I ever did when I was a junior psychologist. I had to go down to an accountancy firm and I had to take clipboards, I think 3 stopwatches, a wall clock, all of this paraphernalia with me. I had to set up in a room, administer the ability test, pencil and paper. And of course, this isn't very engaging or necessarily very nice for the candidate, especially when they're senior. And I think this was for, yeah, senior roles as well. So you kind of feel like you're putting someone under scrutiny when they don't necessarily need that scrutiny. We need it to make a robust assessment, but the candidate experience isn't going to be very engaging this way. And of course, previously there was little realistic preview as well. So candidates would apply, thousands of graduates would apply for a role, and actually they might not know what the role's about. They might just see the word marketing and PR or accounting. So we really are now seeing more of a trend towards giving candidates an idea about what the role entails. You know, marketing in one organization is going to be very different to marketing in perhaps a smaller organization. So we can see, and I'm sure you've all experienced some of these common challenges that we've seen as well. So some key design questions then to think about. So this is what we sort of go back to the drawing board with when we're approached by clients. We say, what are you measuring? What sort of person do you want? It's not just a case of saying, okay, here's a competency library, pick your 5 most important ones. It's about saying, well, hang on, before we do that, what do you know about the person? So I'm using the marketing example again. It's saying, well, we're recruiting for a marketing manager, but going back into the business and saying, well, what do we want the marketing manager to do? What are the new skills that they need? What new competencies and attributes are needed here? So then we can map back to the competencies. So really redesigning this piece, the front end of it, to get that right, because there's no point giving a candidate lots of assessments to do if you're measuring the wrong thing. So going back to the drawing board, what are you measuring? We then look at, well, how will you measure it? I think sometimes there could be a tendency to give candidates all of the assessments in the world because it seems like the right thing to do, but actually assessments need to be specific to the role, specific to what you want to measure, and suitable. You have to think of the validity of the whole assessment process and also the face validity from the candidate. So just because for the last 5 years you might have given, say, 3 ability tests and a personality, it doesn't mean you still necessarily need to do that. So what we like to do is look at, well, what's the candidate experience, what can we measure, and how are we going to measure it? So as John mentioned at the beginning, we tend to use a lot of blended assessments. So from the candidate's point of view, they log in, complete one assessment, but this assessment is made up of, say, a few SJT items, some personality and some ability. But for them, it's one link, one assessment, and a seamless experience. Another question to ask is what technology is available? How can this plug in? How can this make a seamless experience for the candidate? And we'll come more onto technology later on. Branding, customization, personalization. So, how easily can an assessment process be branded? How easily can it be customized? What we're also seeing now is a tendency for clients to not just have their organizational branding, but actually the department level branding. So one organization might have 10 different types of assessments or different look and feels to ensure that it's really personalized. And of course, personalization to the different job roles as well. And then next thing to think about is the feedback and reports. So who's going to get feedback? What reports are they going to have? As I said at the very beginning, we really are seeing a trend in all candidates, whether they've been successful or not, automatically getting reports from the system, and then having follow-up information after that to keep them in that talent pool. And then, of course, next steps in onboarding, which can be forgotten, I think, in talent acquisition. It's at this point we want to develop them, then put them through the development cycle, thinking of talent and leaders of the future. So yeah, these are just some of the questions that we like to think about. And then some key features to make it engaging. So I'm sure lots of you are familiar with these concepts and think about these already. So obviously is the assessment made for the mobile or the desktop? How's it going to work? Personalized versus off the shelf. Immersive. So John was talking at the beginning about immersive, and this is about really putting the candidate into the assessment, into the experience. So it can be from anything from game-based assessments where they are immersed in that game situation, or it can be putting them into a realistic job preview where the candidates are given some questions. Depending on how they answer, they're sent in another direction. They're given another set of questions. And this really helps the candidate to understand the culture of the organization and for the organization to understand more about the candidate. So immersive is obviously going to help make it more engaging as opposed to linear when you say to every candidate, complete X, Y, Z. Being flexible. So if an assessment system and process is flexible, this can really help engagement. So what we mean by that is, can the competencies be customized? Can different parts be tweaked? So if a candidate performs in, say they have high scores on the first set of assessments, well, actually, they probably don't need a telephone interview in the middle as well. They might go straight to the end stage. So it's really now about using data to make predictions, and the predictive analytics piece, which we're seeing. So being more data driven, and unified candidate journey as well. So everything about the process being for the candidate, a bit like a consumer experience. And then some other design challenges to just touch on. So obviously there's then the next level of detail. This is around, obviously, well, you've actually got to implement the process and implement it with the, assessors, the hiring managers, the candidates. So it's useful to think about how can you schedule assessments, how you can connect candidates and assessors. So, if you're doing a video interviewing, is it self-service? So can the candidates log in, answer the question, and then the hiring managers log in and view the answers, or is it two-way, sort of like it is now? So it's all of these things are useful to think about. Content, activities, data capture, tracking scores, and wash-up sheets, decision making as well. And as we were saying, the predictive analytics and the AI can really work well in that decision making piece. So the more data we collect from candidates, the better our predictions can be about where to place them. So we kind of want to get the candidates from A to Z, and the bit in the middle is the data gathering. So over time, we'll hopefully be able to go A to Z. Obviously, that's far in the future, but that's sort of where we're looking to go. And then assessment technology. So once we've overcome the challenges, we can then think about what technology to introduce to really help engage the candidate and enhance the experience, and also enhance it over your competitors as well. So there's obviously online screening, so realistic job previews, situational judgment tests, the use of immersive technology here, online assessments, as I said, the blended approach, so having one link, one login, and all of your assessments are under this umbrella. Branding, video messages. So we are seeing a lot of trends towards video messaging. So employers might put up a welcome from the CEO halfway through the assessment, a pep talk from the hiring manager, anything that you want to share about the organization. So this can be good, again, to keep engagement, to keep candidates in this talent pool. Video interviewing we're seeing as well, and of course, having a video interview means it's flexible for the candidate and the hiring manager. You can log in at any time and view the content, and sort of be more objective, because you can sit down and go through all of the content, rather than fitting in interviews between meetings. Virtual assessment centers. So we're using technology a lot to connect up candidates and assessors virtually, and making this really realistic, immersive. So not just simply having a Zoom link and connecting, but actually having a whole program, a system that they can use. We've been using paper-based assessments for a while, but we're now connecting up the paper-based aspect with the virtual. So everything can be remote, but assessors can also have all of their assessor scoring documents online, and everything can be there. This means you can collect the data in one place, which is good for the analytics. And then, talent, obviously using the data for the talent recommendations, and really using this, as I said before, at an earlier stage. So traditionally, I think we'd get to the assessment centre, have the data, have the wash-up sheet, make a decision. But we're really looking now to use data earlier on, and then use the other assessment methods to help support what we're thinking. This helps build a database, and helps build our data content, so we can build this into machine learning and the AI. And then automatic feedback reports, as I mentioned before. So I suppose in summary, it's using massive and engaging for candidate, and really now seeing the candidate as the consumer, whereas before we'd always see the client as the most important. We're now turning that around, and it's the candidate that's the most important. And then finally, yeah, just make it engaging for everyone. So as I said, it's not just the candidates, not just the hiring managers, but we have to think of other users, clients. So there's sort of 4 people here that we obviously want to focus on when we design assessment processes to make them engaging. And then just finally, just of interest. So we've surveyed a lot of our candidates and clients, and some key feedback that came back was, you can see at the bottom, so 92% of candidates said they found an assessment process that they've used with us engaging. And some of the reasons for this was 90% said that the questions and instructions were easy to follow. The 82% said the assessment content was relevant, and 90% said that they had a good first impression of the organization. So this is something that we can think about if we think about that beginning slide, when, what do candidates experience that's positive and what do they experience that's negative? So I think as well, like I said, thinking of the candidate as the consumer, this will really help develop an engaging candidate experience. And then, yeah, that's it for my slides. What we're going to do now is have a bit of a discussion. But firstly, any questions or any thoughts around anything discussed so far, or any questions that you've got ready that you want to ask Ala'a and John? Yeah, please do make notes as you go and send us any other questions. So discussion then. So first question. So yeah, Ala'a, what new technology are you currently adopting or seeing when designing assessment processes?
Thanks, Becky. Let me, split this answer into 2 folds. The first is before this pandemic. I think one of the main pressing demands for clients and for different organizations was to automate the whole assessment experience. As you described, this one is really key for a lot of organizations. And I think the efforts towards that were really good. So now you will find many solutions that respond to this challenge. Now, having it all in one platform and automate the whole experience from A to Z is what people are looking for more and more in my engagements. So this is number one, and this continues to happen after the pandemic as well, because now you don't only want this platform to manage the experience, you want also to include virtual tools in this platform. So yeah, I think this is the main technology that people are demanding, and I see a lot of demand toward this. Number one. Number two, you will see a lot of clients and organizations are demanding more tech-savvy solutions. Not only the traditional assessment tools that prove validity. Those, for example, are people are tending to more gamification assessment tools. The challenge with those remains with the validity and reliability of such tools. However, clients and people are tending towards such tools, especially in young organizations. Virtual reality in more mature organizations becomes more interesting to them, because the effort saved, the cost saved through adopting virtual reality tools are also an area that a lot of clients are looking at. However, I think in the region, the language barrier and the Arabization of such tools are still an area of development. However, I think this is where the development is going towards in the technology and adopting the technology. Lastly, I would say the artificial intelligence, the predictive models that are being built now, with the amount of data that you have from the assessment on different assessments, is an area that people are looking at as well. Now, there are in the past 2 years, many organizations are putting that into place with the people analytics and the data analytics. But however, assessments play a huge role, because the amount of data that you get from assessments are really interesting to see how AI and predictive models will respond to that. So yeah, that's maybe the trends and the demands in technology people and clients are looking at.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, it's really interesting. And I think as well, AI, it's such a wide remit. You know, you can have something from very small, just simple decision making, to something more complex. So I think it's important to think about the levels of this. So no, thank you. So next question. So how have you seen assessment processes change in the last year due to the pandemic?
So, I mean, it's very clear that this pandemic has changed a lot when it comes to, especially the assessments. People and clients were valuing the interaction with the candidates as part of the candidate's experience. And I think they were forced now to think about taking this virtually and how to make it engaging, as you described, Becky, in your presentation, how to make it engaging for everyone. And that was very interesting to see this year. I would say the output, the anxiety that people had in the beginning of this pandemic was maybe exaggerated, because it forced everyone to go into a more technology-driven assessment, and it worked. I think because people had to think about each and every step of this assessment process and how to make it engaging virtually. That was the main change of how I saw the different engagements and the different assessments are being taken now. There were doubts about how would you engage a group in an assessment exercise, how you would manage the whole process from A to Z, how would you ensure security and credibility of the different assessment tools while people are conducting these assessments virtually. However, I think the change in these processes were up to the level. It actually convinced a lot of people that this can be done totally virtually, totally based in technology, and you can save a lot of money by doing such.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really interesting point you made. Everyone's been forced into it, and it's now sort of going back a few steps and thinking, well, how can we make it engaging? How can we make it efficient? And why are we using it? Do we need everything that we've implemented? And how can we, do more to enhance this? So yeah, thank you. The next question, question 3. So The Economist has dubbed the rapid organizational change and digital transformation as a tech acceleration in certain areas. So what evidence have you seen of this in your own engagements?
I mean, maybe we talked about in the beginning and in the first 2 questions, but clients and organizations are, now demanding a more tech-savvy solutions, not only, the typical solutions that would solve the problem up to now, but now clients are demanding more technology-driven tools and technology-driven solutions. And if not for efficiency and effectiveness, Becky, it's in preparation for a digital disruption, because they're aware that they're coming into an era where a younger generation would demand more digital and technology driven tools and tools in preparation for that, or just to make it more efficient and more effective.
Yeah, thank you. And what else? Anything else to add on the candidate experience? So what other things have you been doing to help engage candidates in your own practices?
So actually, this one single platform where you take the candidate from the start to the end was, I would say, the major thing that happened throughout the pandemic and throughout the last year. I have, been on the search for such a platform where you can take the candidate from A to Z, and not only the candidate, but as well all the stakeholders around the assessment process. And this has improved, the engagement of candidates. Now, besides the typical, candidate journey touch points where you need to think about. Now, going virtual made it maybe more difficult. However, it is still key to engage and think about each step and each milestone in this candidate journey. However, this unification of the platform where people and all the stakeholders around the assessment process will log into one place and have everything in that one place, because you can control even this journey step by step where they would where you want to take them, maybe much better than conducting this in face-to-face or in reality, because you have a full control of this journey from the start to the end.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, really interesting. And yeah, like you say, you just get more data, and the more data we can gather, the more automated we can actually make the process, but still keeping the candidate experience and the candidate at the heart of things. So thank you. And finally, what opportunities are you seeing, for emerging technologies such as virtual assessment centers, AI, automation, and decision making?
I mean, yeah, virtual assessments will now prove that it is more efficient and more effective. And I think there will be many organizations will go to down to that path, up to the point that we might, not see assessment centers done in a venue or in a face-to-face interaction anymore. Maybe, as we said, AI would be very interesting to see in the coming year, how people would use a lot of the data points that assessment generates, besides the typical people data, and combine them into decision-making models, how they would impact, maybe forecast and anticipate behavior changes, fitment for roles, potential, growth for people. That would be very interesting to see how people would use that in an AI decision-making models. Automation will be more and more on the, as we said, automating the different processes from start to end, making this experience more engaging for everyone around the assessment process. However, this all comes with many risks and costs. Now, I think the validity and the reliability of the different tools that are based on virtual reality to the gamification would be as well something to look at in the coming year or two, and how people would respond to that, make sure that those tools are valid, are reliable to use, and get credibility for such tools. Also, from what I've seen in many engagements, data security and confidentiality is one of the key concerns for many clients when we are going down this path. Many organizations, and that's right, think their data would be at risk when we go fully for using such tools, and the amount of data that you might have on their people and on their practices are large, and not having proper security measures for such would be a huge risk to them. Infrastructure would be as well one of the risks to that, and that's maybe on the candidate's side rather than the organization side, because it's much easier to get prepared from an organization point of view. However, from a candidate perspective, I think, and that's a region challenge, having the proper technology infrastructure would be, again, something to look at in the next year or two.
Yeah, no, thank you. All really interesting points. And, I think it's about, who's using the data as well. So, having people who are qualified and trained and who understand it, who, like John said at the very beginning, what do we put into AI? We need to put in robust science to get good predictive outcomes. So No, great, thank you. Does anyone in the audience have any questions to ask? Please do put in the chat box, or Ala'a, would you mind if anyone contacted you afterwards if they have any specific questions?
Oh, absolutely. Please contact me at any point.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, it was really, really interesting. I think just before we wrap up, yes, thank you very much for taking the time to share this. Really insightful, and I think we'll have you back on another episode to ask some more questions about this. So thank you. Anything else to add on this discussion, John?
No, thank you. I think all of those trends are really, really interesting and really good food for thought as we move into the next year or two. But lots of exciting opportunities, I think, to sort of improve our practices and to continue to evolve the platforms and the capability in this area. So yeah, thanks Ala'a for joining. Really, really interesting discussion there.
Thank you. We'll just wrap up in a second. We've just had a question from Sunny. So Sunny's asking, will we be running training on virtual assessment centres? Yes. So really good question. We don't just want to provide the software for people to use. We want to be able to train you, work with you, embed it. As we've been talking about, if this first part isn't done correctly, then you're not going to get the results you want. So no, we can pick up afterwards with that. But no, we should, I think every part of the using technology along the way, training is really, really important and key.
Okay. Just to add to that, I mean, we at some point, as well as training people on the assessment centres, we would provide sort of content authoring rights as well to people that are using the platform, so that you can upload your own exercises or author your own content to add onto the platform as well.
Yeah, okay. If we move to the next slide. Okay, then just, next step. So if anybody does want a system demonstration or more information, contact us. Just to let you know, our next event is on the 24th of May, and we'll be discussing diversity in assessment. So please do send us any content or questions beforehand. If you would like to take part or be on the panel, please let us know. And our community. So just to mention, we now have a Sova community. So talking about the candidate pools, talent pools, we have I suppose a client community, client pool. So we will send more information about this, but what this effectively is somewhere where clients can log into, they can read articles, they can view webinars, they can get content, they can have discussions and just interact with other like-minded professionals in the industry. And what we're going to do is we'll probably create a separate Middle East room, but there's, everyone from all over the world is on there, and just really a community that's a safe place to discuss anything to do with assessment. So yeah, if you want any more information, please let me know and I can send you the link to join. Okay. But yeah, I think that's it for us, unless anyone has any final questions or any final last words, John.
No, thanks very much for joining, and thanks again to Ala'a.
Yes, thank you, Ala'a. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Becky. Thanks, John. Glad to be here, and thanks to everyone for joining. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.